That's the
Yeah.
truth.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Jessica, welcome. Lisa, welcome.
Thank
All right.
you.
Look at that. 7 o'clock. We're starting close to on time, almost like we planned it. I know, it's funny. All right, so I do have a confession to make. In my reminder today, remember I said I broke open that bottle of tequila? I ended up drinking a lot of it.
What kind of tequila?
Gold, Jose Cuervo.
Oh, no,
It was kind of like a impulse.
We got to get you to raise your standards with tequila.
Yeah,
Which
but
one, Evan, which one do you drink?
Invictus is one that I just got turned on to. And what I like about it is when you finish the bottle and you think you're done, the cap has a shot of tequila in it. So my wife really liked that. She's a tequila fan.
You know, there's an old saying, talk is cheap. Just send it to him.
well, yeah, you know, the funny thing is, Evan, I was drinking tequila. I started back in '83 when I was going through my surgical technology training in Oakland. And up until that point, we didn't really drink a lot of hard liquor. And, you know, you develop a taste for it. And so over the years, it would fluctuate, you know. So for a while, I was drinking a lot of whiskeys because we were doing keto. And then my neighbor, we were chatting a few weeks ago, and she said, yeah, I was reading an article about how tequila is healthier for you than whiskey. And I'm like,
it's a
right.
stimulant. It's not a depressant.
Right.
Yeah, made from agave nectar.
Yeah.
And it's loaded with antioxidants.
Yeah. So I'm
doesn't
like,
give you a headache when you get the good stuff.
Yeah.
I
So
love this kind of talk. Liquor is good for me.
Yeah. Well, I was reading a good article about the health benefits of whiskey, and I said, you don't have to twist my arm, you know? So
Well, my dad used to say if he, you know, like he had his construction company and my brothers would work for him, and they'd have lunch or something, and the guys that worked for him would have a beer. And my dad said he'd rather my brothers drank a beer than a soda. Not because of wanting to get the kid out, you know. He wouldn't do that, but he said it's healthier.
Yeah.
Well, nobody ever drank water or soda. Hundreds of years ago, they were drinking beer because if they drank water, they would die.
Right. Well, liquid
the beer
bread
wasn't as strong as it is now.
Right, but it was liquid bread. The Egyptians, they had a lot of grain and they fermented it. That's how they stored, you know, their grain for a long time. But it is very interesting, the history. But maybe that's a good topic, you know, the history of spirits. So we could talk about that. But in the meantime,
I love your picture.
Oh, thank you.
Barry, where is she? Oh, there she is.
I had to move some stuff around, and I didn't want to make everybody crazy. So
No, so we'll jump in a minute. I know there's I got a few emails. People are going to be coming in a minute, but we'll jump in. So just curiosity, did everyone had some nice weather this weekend?
Yeah.
Cool, but it was beautiful.
Yeah, it was really very surprising. It was nice to be outside. I was telling Barry I got some new yard tools and I'm out working and it's really nice, but I miss having the boys around my crew. And I said, man, I'm really sore and tired. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm doing all this stuff myself. So I think I see a lawn service in my future.
I laid 5 cubic yards of mulch this weekend. I got another 5 for next weekend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fun.
Well, the nice thing is it keeps you in shape, right? We were laughing, my wife and I, we got rid of some furniture. We got some other furniture, and, you know, you're doing all this stuff and it's like, yeah, you know, all these nice days, you want to enjoy them, but you have to take advantage of it to do the things you need to do. So I don't know. It's crazy. All right. It's 7:05. Let's get going. And it looks like everyone knows everyone here, so we won't really have to spend time on, not that we're wasting time on introductions, but Lisa, I hear you've been doing quite a lot of interviewing lately.
Yeah, but I haven't been hearing back. I had 2 on Friday and 1 last Tuesday. So I guess I'm just being a little bit not patient.
Well,
I guess patience is a virtue, right?
well,
I don't have it.
well,
Friday.
no. But Tuesday, did they send you a confirmation at all? Anything?
I actually flipped over the phone screen to the hiring manager, and she said she had a bunch of people she still had to phone screen because they were coming from the outside.
Okay.
So I was like the first one she interviewed. That was for the addiction job. And then Friday, I had a screen from GSK for a rare drug for lupus, but that was a pre-screen. And she said, at the end, I asked her if I was, what she thought of my, my skill level, because she was just asking yes and no questions. Are you a U.S. resident, et cetera? And I said, am I a strong candidate, do you think, for this position? She sounded like she was about 20. And she said, oh, yeah, I'm sending you on. The hiring manager will be giving you a call in the next week or 2.
Good.
How many times you hear that and they never call you? I hate that.
Well,
But I get it. At least
yeah, no, and the other one was for the hiring manager herself called me from New York, and I skipped over again because it was an inside one, and it was for CSL Behring for an injectable for IVIG. Or not injectable, but an IG drug that has an injectable and is infused. So
Well,
I don't know.
good.
Those were both Friday back to back. One was at 2 and one was at 4.
Yeah. No, that's very interesting. Well, the other thing, Lisa, it's what's the norm when they say, and we've talked about this, there are certain times of the year when people will get back to you in 24, 36, 48 hours, and then there are times they go a week to a month. And, just when you think you've heard it all, or even when they give you a date, the question is, if I don't hear from you by a certain fill in the blank, should I reach out to you? And they're like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. Then what happens? So I don't know if it's just the time of the year, which I wanted to throw this out, Lisa, but I think it goes well with your question or situation. And this is true for a lot of people. This time of year in June, end of May, a lot of people are getting ready, right? Year-end graduation, school's getting out, vacation. There's a lot of, mentally, we're in a different spot, right? We're gearing up for the summer mode, but yet we're kind of heading into reopening mode. And I almost feel like it's the time change, or jet lag. It takes a while for us to get back, but we're still a little bit out of sorts because in some ways, your customers are slowing down, right? They're going to a reduced hours or shifts because of the summer vacations coming up. Yet we're being told we have to start opening up and going back out. So I wanted to throw this out, Lisa, and this may be a situation that's going through on the hiring stage. So I wanted to throw it out if anyone's feeling or seeing anything out there slightly off kilter. Welcome, Lisa C.
But I have to say, I've asked about on all 3 calls, I asked about the timeline. Just because of where we are at with COVID and everything. And the first one, that was the addiction one, said that, they want to try to get out as quickly as possible because they feel like the opioid epidemic is just getting worse. So whoever will let them in, they're looking to hire by July 1st.
Yeah.
So they're going to try to do it quickly.
Yeah.
Like phone and then Skype and you're hired.
Yep.
But the other two were saying more like a couple of weeks. And one of them even said, you know, would be hiring an entire sales force in August, and they'd be starting in September, on September 1st.
Okay. Well, that's good.
And that was GSK, so.
All right. Well, good. Please keep us updated. We'll keep everything crossed. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, Steve. Sorry I was late.
No problem. Barry is taking attendance, and she put a little check next to your name.
But I have my camera off. I put it on. We'll see what I have. I don't know if it's going to show.
Oh, there you go.
Shows me. Yeah.
No, it's good. So, Alan, have you heard anything? You've been talking to a few people in the last few weeks. Do you feel this time of year anything different?
I think that they're trying to fill it out on a national level. And right now, as talk radio on Sirius XM said, New York is now finally seeing a lowering, and yet in other areas of the country, they're growing. We went from 60 to 90 to 150 new cases in 3 days in a row. And our governor just said, we're going to stop opening up. Whoever's open, that's fine, but we're going to stop it. People are getting angry at the political leaders, but you know, this is the first time. So they're just kind of getting a feel when it comes to the job market. I reached out to one of the people I haven't heard from in a week. I'm not going to play this waiting game anymore. And he said, well, we dealt with a fraud case in our company. A lot of money was missing. Haven't forgotten about you, but right now we got to find out where the fraud's from. And another one said, yeah, you know, you're perfect. We're what we're looking for. And, you know, we'll get back to you. So, you know, I've been through this before, as just said a few minutes ago. You know, they always say, you know, well, we'll get back. Yeah, you're one of our top candidates. I just live my life and just kind of move forward as I would. And I'm not playing that waiting game anymore. If it happens, it happens. And that's kind of a realistic, not necessarily a pessimistic view.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you. Jim, have you seen anything? We were just talking a moment before you got on. I don't know how much you heard. Usually this time of year, we shift to summer mode, right? Especially in the hospitals, everyone's going on vacation, certain things that you have to put off or speed up depending on the time of year. But because of COVID-19, we're coming from a standing still process to moving forward quickly. Have you picked up any, like, it's almost like a disturbance in the force, right? Have you felt anything different this time of year?
Well, you know, for me, it's probably just a reflection of what I'm hearing from other people that are in my business. And some of them are doing very well. And so I think it's just like anytime you're in a moment of change like this and uncertainty, we all have a choice, you know. We can choose to shelter or we can choose to step forward, you know. Everyone on the call knows that, you know. So I would say, you know, I'm seeing a little both, and I think it's probably reflective of how that particular individual is dealing with the situation. And that's not to say, hey, we're in a pretty weird time right now, because we are. But, you know, disruption many times does lead to opportunity. And I think, you know, that's kind of what we have to lean on, you know. Our attitude is going to make everything in terms of how we get through this, I think.
Yeah, no, certainly different. Thank you. Anyone else? Jessica, are you picking anything up? I had to put you on mute. There was some music coming through. Okay.
Yeah, I did take myself off and then put myself back on. Sorry about the music.
Yeah, no problem.
My computer has a mind of its own, which is
So-
probably good because sometimes I wonder about.
Yeah, you and Catherine should probably have a chat one of these days.
Really?
Got a ghost.
Yeah. Anyway, well, I haven't been looking, and I should. And there's a guy I know who was referred by a mutual friend who had been in touch with me last year because he was starting up a business. And he was a Microsoft employee, as was I. He's very technical. And he has been writing and having another guy write online courses for things like learning to program and code and AI things and such. And he wants me to sell it to colleges. And colleges hire professors. And they expect that when they pay a professor, that the professor is going to provide the coursework. I mean, at least that's what I think. And I did help him out. Last year, I found a CRM for him. I did some data entry. I ran lists of colleges. And, you know, fortunately, I could input the data into the CRM pretty well, easily and quickly. Well, he just reached out to me on Friday. He wants me to start calling colleges. And I think the colleges aren't open in the summer as much. And also with the coronavirus, it's like, buddy, you are really brilliant and you've started business in the past that went really well and you sold it for millions, but I'm thinking, am I missing something here? But I can't get all in about this. And I need to be all in. I need to really believe in what I'm selling and feel like my time is well spent. You know, that I'll get a good return on my investment. Or it just doesn't work. And it's a bad vibe I send out, I guess, if I'm not all in. And Evan, you have something to tell me.
I took a course during unemployment that was fulfilled by a grant by New York State Unemployment, or it happened to be project management. And it was, they're paying this professor and this company thousands of dollars for the course, which was great. It was like over $4,000. So maybe with what's going on with unemployment, if his skill, what he's teaching is something that would be something appropriate for teaching a skill set to the unemployed to get back into the workforce, maybe he should think about having you call the state's unemployment and look for the grants that may be there within the state that wherever state he's in, because this was through New York State.
Well, we had talked last year about doing that, and thank you for reminding me, because I just put this out of my head in December. You know, it was. The other thing is we talked about firms that provide contract employees, like for Microsoft, and they would be looking for someone who could program, that they could present to the companies, and they could give us referrals to people or something like that. So along the lines with what you're saying, Evan, that there's a different route. And the email that he sent was that I would specifically call in colleges and, you know, he'd pay me a lot of money for each one I found, but I just...
Have you,
enough clarity around what exactly you're selling to the colleges. Like, it sounds good, but it's not quite so easy to just pick up the phone and just say, hey, you know, you want my program?
Well, I don't really think they're our target audience, even under the best of times. But during this summer, and especially with the issues about, well, 60 Minutes last night, they had a
I was about
segment.
to say, yeah, I saw that last night.
Yeah, about the kids that are really, the college kids don't like the fact that they're not in the college environment. They're burned out or whatever from doing online learning. Even though they are getting credits and they would be able to continue doing that and graduate, they're not wanting to do that.
They can't party and, you know, have, I mean, think about, it's a lot of grit and rigor now, right? But there's none of the fun. I'm glad it's not me, but man.
Well, but in fairness, and you know, I went dancing every night. So, but in fairness, well, I did and I wish I could remember where I got this info, but most of what we learn, we overhear. And that might not be quite true, but when you think of collaboration when you think of discussions during classes and such, and when you study together and things like that, there's a lot of learning going on. And when you're isolated and you're sitting at home in your computer, on your computer and learning, I don't blame them for not wanting that. And I think they're not going to come away as well educated as if they were in the regular.
Last night with the 60 Minutes, they were saying the colleges themselves, the leadership of the colleges really did not know what direction that they were going to go. They want to open up, but they said that this is a one-time shot. And one of the professors who's a president of one of the colleges, and I don't remember which one it was, and she was just simply saying, this is a one-time. It's either going to work and we can't afford to fail. And they're doing everything they can to make the system work. But to your point, the kids, and my daughter just graduated this last Saturday from a university here in Oregon, and she's saying, I'm so grateful. The last semester or the last quarter, whatever you want to call it, she says it was virtual, and she says she just didn't feel like she was part of the system.
Yeah.
And it, I guess it also depends on how the teachers are teaching, because I was very hesitant to take the course. It was through SUNY Stony Brook. And it was the first time they were doing it via Zoom. But during the course, we broke up into partnerships. We had individual work, then we had partnerships, and we worked in groups. We had work during class, and we had work outside of class where we interacted. And I thought the teacher did an outstanding job of getting us engaged. When I think back, how long ago was it? I was in college. I was just as interactive, and I think I got more out of it because you're forced when you're in Zoom to you got to listen. You have to be quiet and let other people speak. I think that it's not bad. I think it's different, and they'll remember it for the rest of their lives. But it also depends on the teacher. There are teachers out there that.
Well, and we're spending way too much time on this, so I thank you guys. But I just did want to say these are not Zoom classes. These are where people go online and they just do it themselves.
No, I'm not talking about that. Nope.
I know, and
because I'm doing a Zoom class too. It's interactive and
yeah.
Could be that.
So thank you. I did send him an email telling him thanks, but no thanks earlier today. But I just thought, well, I'll bounce this off you guys. Make sure I didn't burn a bridge that I shouldn't have. But that's all I know about what's going on out there.
Thank you, Jessica. Yeah, there's a lot of strange things, but to Jim's point, there are some people who can take this adversity and use it as a jumping off point. And then there are some people, because of the type of work and the industries they're in, they're just opening up, and their hairdressers are struggling to open up, the barbershops, the restaurants are just getting back. We've had outdoor seating, and hopefully in the next week, they'll be able to bring in 50% or very reduced capacity indoors to have a meal. And it's funny, again, we're in this strange process here where our personal and our professional lives are coming to this juncture. Home Depot, I had to go to Home Depot on Saturday, I think, and the place was a zoo. Everybody's working, right? Picking up stuff, and the return line, the checkout line, not thousands of people, but a ton of people. So it's interesting getting these mixed signals. On one hand, I want to go full bore and hit the road running, and then other things, we got to slow down. We're not quite opening yet. So I'll just share this. So manufacturing, right? So you talk to certain companies, some of the medical device companies, they're on a reduced work schedule. So the implants are, they're still manufacturing implants, but some of the elective surgeries are just starting to ramp up in the hospitals. So they do have excess inventory, but once they open it, whatever their normal, if they can add additional cases, that inventory is going to be run through quickly. So I don't know if people know how to plan for that. We've had a stoppage of elective surgery for 90 days, give or take. So, Jim, your products, are they elective? Some of the stuff you're selling, right?
Yeah, ours are really totally elective because it's really preventative. It's health through prevention. And so, but like I say, even health through prevention, we find, I've got several doctors that have my device in their practices, and the volumes have held in pretty well. Part of it has to do with the platform that we have, because it creates a lot of repetitive with, a high retention rate. And every product's going to be different. But it's interesting, Steve, you touched on so many things with what you just said. And it's just like there's going to be winners, there's going to be losers, there's going to be leads, there's going to be lags. And just, the whole elective surgery has just diminished demand for those products, but other products, again, are in high demand. And so I guess as individuals, we just have to figure out, who am I, what do I want, and where can I, if I need to make some money now, where can I apply my skills to do that? And maybe we need to look at a little more flexibility, say, look, maybe I'll jump into something else for a while here, because I know there's a high demand. We've really got different areas of the economy are just distorted right now. So I know that's easy for me to say, but I do think there could be some validity to that.
No, I think it's a valid point. Yeah. I mean, I know a handful of people, and Lisa's eating dinner right now, so she can't talk, right, Lisa? But, selling protective equipment and supplies out there, there's opportunities out there. The fire is great. Lisa, sorry, I know you were chewing, but
eating grapes.
All right. Well, I didn't want to interrupt you. You look like you were enjoying them. But to your point, Jim, there's certainly opportunities at the right time. And so the interesting thing is, again, we're getting different signals, and trying to interpret that is really the challenge, right? We can't stop the waves, but we can learn to surf. And that's the trick.
Yeah, that's a good analogy, actually. I was thinking about that when you said it, but that's a good visual.
Yeah. So anyone else have something they'd like to share? Oh, before, I want to shout out to Catherine. Catherine was on a radio show last week, and she had a nice interview down in Florida, and she gave a nice interview about her product, and it's out there on the on YouTube, and we're gonna share it over the next day or two. But Catherine, it's interesting. You talk about an opportunity. She's out there talking about her product, planting seeds going forward. People aren't going to be looking at her product and listen to the radio, but the idea there is that she's building and building a foundation and planting seeds. So, Catherine, do you mind sharing your because I don't know anyone else who's been on the radio, TV, and podcast recently. So now that you're a star.
I'll sign autographs.
Yeah. What was your big takeaway? I mean, the guy did an excellent job interviewing Catherine, but anything, in retrospect, was it as challenging or as interesting as you thought, or what were your expectations?
Well, I think that it really went well. I was quite pleased with the questions that he asked. I wasn't really prepared for a couple of them, so I had to kind of think fast as to how I was going to answer it. But on the whole, I think it went very well. And he was really, really nice and all. I was really apprehensive beforehand, because it was live, and it was like, okay, if I mess up, I really mess up. but it went well. I was very pleased with it.
Yep. Well,
Did
and
you have a chance to know what question?
No, I did not know what he was going to ask.
Because I think you could ask that ahead of time.
Yeah, next time do ask them. They've done that with me 20 years ago when I did these things. They would give me questions, right? When I
Good.
with them.
Yeah, and then you feel better, and you won't. Not only will you answer the questions better and be more prepared, although it sounds like you did a good job, but also that it'll take some of the stress away.
Right. That would be a big help.
No, well, it's interesting. We were talking about a few calls ago. I don't know. They're all merging. It could have been last week, last month, last year. I don't know. But we were talking about prepping, doing a presentation or closing or even interview questions, right? Answering questions are one of the challenging parts of any sales job, and especially if you're transitioning. But the thing here is, how many times have we said, oh, I've learned how to overcome virtually any question they can ask me. And then all of a sudden you get comfortable and someone asks you a question that you've never heard. And I'm like, what? So I'll just share a quick example. I had someone ask me a question about packaging on an implant once, about certain criteria. And I'm thinking, we covered a lot on the design of screws, the metallurgical metal makeup. This was a titanium implant. I mean, we covered all these indications, but we never were trained on how to answer a question about packaging. And I was like, so the thing is, it prompted me to understand, and we were fortunate because we went out to Monument, Colorado. My company had a small manufacturing plant there, and they would take us around. And I actually asked the question. Never got asked before, but if anyone ever asked a question about packaging, I'm ready for that. So, but it's interesting. I mean, if you think about it, there's always somebody out there thinking outside the circle, right? Almost to Jim's point, how do we get prepared for the unexpected question? Anyone ever? And that's actually an interesting topic. We talk about emergency situations, COVID-19, power outages, storms. How do we prepare for the unexpected? And this is one of these times.
Just to give a very brief example, I had a radio show as a co-host of called Contemporary Healthcare. And whenever a person on the radio called in and asked us a question that myself or the person doing the show was not prepared for, we'd say, well, if we think about it, how would you answer that?
Oh, nice.
That's a good one.
And it's amazing how they knew the answer. They just, testing us, who the heck knows. They go, well, I think, and we let them talk. And we said, well, it's not a right or wrong answer. And a lot of it came back to naturopath and, preventative medicine, cardiovascular, a lot of things to do with memory, whatever it was. And we would just say, well, we kind of throw it back into their court. So I think sometimes even in an interview, there's nothing wrong with them saying to us, describe a successful day. And I don't think it's wrong to simply say, well, my successful day is A, B, but what have you found to be the most successful representative, and what was their day like? And some of them might respond, oh, well, that's a good thought. Yeah, well, it came from you. So I think we have to just simply start thinking a little bit outside the box and not being so terrified of the interview process. For those people who are not familiar with radio, it's a scary thought until you actually do it a few times. TV, you're staring at a lens, and we're not sure of how many people are on the other side. But I've done that a couple of times, and I just talk to a lens, but not, it's a comfort zone.
And the other thing is, you're there as the expert. So
Right.
so realize that. I mean, I've given presentations to auditoriums full of doctors, and I don't have stage fright or whatever. It's because when I was doing that, I was the expert on the cochlear implant.
Mhm.
So I just realized that they're there to learn from me.
Mhm.
But I did want to say, Alan, the answer the question with the question back to them about what for what we're going through right now with sequestering and not being able to socialize and the uncertainties and everything. We need laughter. And there's this comedian called Jerry, Gerry, last name Dee. He's a clean comedian. He doesn't resort to, what I call bathroom humor. And he is Canadian, but there's all sorts of YouTube blogs or whatever they do on YouTube where he does his thing. And he was asked to teach history, and he never taught history. And he talks about how some kid would really mess him up by raising his hand and saying, well, what about the war in, 1812? Did this or this happen? And he said, and he does this, and he's really funny when he does it. I'm just saying, if you want to just give yourself a break and have a good time, and do some fun thing, then, check in. But because he'd say, well, he'd turn it around and say, well, what do you think that the impact was? And then he'd say, class, does anybody else have any input? Well, how about it if you all look it up and we'll talk about it tomorrow? And then everybody come in and he'd talk about it. He'd say, well, good work, guys. And that's how he
Best way
taught
to,
history, because he had no idea. He never studied. He failed history in high school. So I just recommend him. That triggered this because I really think we need to laugh a little bit more.
That's actually a really good example of what we were talking about earlier. It's if each one of us today, we're going to have to go in and teach a history class. Well, we could have A to Z in terms of how well we do. And a lot of it just has to do with our self-confidence and going into something we don't know, and our ability to talk to other people in a manner that channels the direction it needs to be channeled. So that was great.
It's more collaborative.
Pardon me?
It's more collaborative, and I think people
Yes.
remember it better.
Well, there's a lot to say for collaboration in many instances, isn't there?
Well, it imprints in our minds if we're adding to the conversation rather than having someone, tell us something.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Telling ain't training. That's
Yep.
a great book.
Oh,
okay.
I did not know that was a book.
And I'm a trainer, so I come from sales training. My last
yeah.
position.
Yeah.
So instructional design, just the way you explained it, that's discovery. That's the best way to teach.
Mm-hmm.
Just getting up there and telling them. Most people learn 70% of what you learn is on the job, by discovering. So if you can get them to discover in a classroom, they're going to remember it more, and you're doing a better job than just getting up there and lecture.
And
Yeah,
even
I
with
think
kids,
I think I brought up a few meetings ago, reading is forgetting, watching is remembering, and doing is understanding. It was the last page of a child development class. And I said, why didn't they have this on the first day? She said, then why would I have taught the class? And I just looked at her completely dumbfounded, and she said, now you can go out and do it. So yeah, I do believe that doing is understanding. I think that's a key factor.
well, my nephew was about 6. I was visiting for a few days, and he was at that stage where he's going, what are you doing? And I'd be, well, Eric, what do you think I'm doing? Well, it looks like you're frying eggs in the pan. You got it. It was annoying to be asked these questions constantly. So I was trying, my motivation there wasn't as pure. It was like, maybe I can get him to stop this. But he turned out well. So I didn't harm him with my approach.
Well, that's it's interesting. So I'll just share this. I just got a note that our scout troop is going to be meeting next Monday after 3 months. So that's a big deal for the scouts, because this is a time of year when they start doing a lot of outdoor camping and learning skills. But Evan, this is a great phrase, and let me know if you ever heard of the EDGE method when it comes to training or teaching. So I use this a lot with scouts, but it's also applicable to team development and working. So the EDGE method: explain, demonstrate, guide, and then enable. So what happens is, and this happens, I see it with clients who have teams, they'll bring someone in, they'll explain what they need done, and then they'll just enable them. So they forget, thinking, oh yeah, they know exactly what I mean. And we do it with children too. You know, you lived here your whole life, you know what I mean. And the perfect example is when my kids were younger and I would ask them to clean up their room. They would make a path from the door to the bed. But what I really needed was for them to pick up their toys, put their clothes away, and make their bed. But I didn't say that. I said clean up their room. So the funny thing is, many times we do this, right? So to Alan's point, you know, see one, do one, teach one, that EDGE method really helps us take that concept and really do that. And again, orthopedics, I worked with residents, orthopedic residents, podiatry residents. I was fortunate because there was a podiatry program at UConn. And when we did fracture fixation, all this hands-on was to be able for them to see it and understand it. And it really makes sense. And there's a lot of things that sometimes you were talking about younger people. I think, Jessica, you were bringing that earlier, is that sometimes they don't have that frame of reference. And I think sometimes we just assume they do. And the reality is we don't. And at the same time, we don't want to insult somebody by demonstrating or guiding them. But the truth is, it would really help solve a lot of these issues even if we did a mini version of that. So I was wondering if you guys ever used an approach like that or any other method.
The only thing that can come close in my past industry was selling opioids. And to everyone's point, whenever the doctor or provider would say, so to go from this opioid to this, the dosage, whatever it might be, because you can't visualize it really, you can't explain it, you can't demonstrate it. And my comment back to them said, was that a question or was that the answer? And then they look at me and they say, well, that's right, correct? You know, the dosage for morphine to this one is such and such, correct? I said, once again, is that a question? Because when you give this to your patient, when you write this down on a pad, whenever the case may be, because you're not giving them a sample of an opioid, is that a question or is that your answer? And these are doctors, these are anesthesiologists. I try to simplify it after that, saying it's one-to-one. But yeah, when you don't have anything physical in your hand, the words have to be accurate. They have to visualize it. They have to understand it. And that's the doing part. And I think that we can see that in multiple circumstances in our own lives. You know, what is it we cannot see? And yet we're trying to explain it. And I don't know, when you've all been in the surgical setting, or many of you have been in surgical setting, I can't imagine being on the back part of a doctor and saying, no, twist it 2 degrees the other way. And I can't imagine them looking at you and saying, I can't do this. You're the surgeon. You're the one doing it. It's in your hands. But yeah, and yet you need to twist it 2 degrees. I don't understand how they would understand what you're saying and put it into practice. So I congratulate anybody who is in that. I don't want to be in that circumstance. Let's put it that way.
Yes, Alan, you hit it right on the head. That's probably one of the most challenging things to go there and put your hands, you know, under your arms or in your pockets and help coordinate the back table and be 3 steps ahead of the surgeon and getting the nurses set up, or more importantly, sometimes helping the surgeon if he's unfamiliar with that piece of equipment. And but that's also the part of the consulting job that we love, right? So there is a sales component, but going in there, and this is why I love the medical device field and this type of sales, because there was an educational component. And if you were fortunate enough, and if you've done your job right, the surgeon had an opportunity to play with the equipment with a bone model, or even we had cadaver labs, right? They would go and they would practice with the new equipment, especially the new technology, because they were bringing out innovative equipment all the time. So our goal was to train them beforehand so they didn't have to go in there and do it cold. On occasion, and again, I forget which call, but we were talking about, there were circumstances where you had a very unique situation and you had equipment that wasn't used on a regular basis, right? It was a specialty procedure. And that's when they relied on your skill, your training, your experience to come in there and help them. And we were there as a consultant, and it was, again, it really brought the best out in us, but we also had to stay on top of our game to be able to do that. But that's why we stayed sharp, right? We always had to be prepared to help the physician anytime, any place, right? 24/7. So, but yes, it was exciting until it wasn't anymore. And you're like, okay, I'm hanging up my pager. So
the difference that the person who's the rep, the training that they get, that they're prepared to be the expert and realize that they are the person who knows the most about their product, regardless if it's their first time or not. Everybody, whoever sold medical devices, getting that first time you're in a room, it's like, oh, what if he asked me this? What if he asked me that? And, you know, there's always somebody who's there to support you and goes, relax, you know so much more about this product than he'll ever know. And that to me was that aha moment. And it worked out. Yeah, you were in there in the OR and you got this big open wound, and sure enough, it worked out fine. But yeah, training is not as easy as people think it is.
yeah. So, which brings me to the next topic here, which I think it segues into Catherine knowing her product. She invented it. She designed it. She manufactured it, right? Nobody knows her product like Catherine does. Or if you're interviewing, no one knows you better than you, right? So when they ask you a question about your background or your skills or your experience or your fill in the blank, nobody knows the answer better than you. So you remember that commercial, that old "Never Let Him See You Sweat"?
Yes.
It's only people of a certain age who know that, right? I think we're all on that age on the call. But yeah, I mean, I remember that commercial, and that's it. You show fear, you're dead.
But the funny thing is that just exhibiting that confidence is enough for a lot of times for people to believe that you actually know what you're talking about. You could have all the knowledge in the world, but if you're missing the confidence to deliver the message, you're going to have no credibility. How many times have we seen people who do not know what the heck they're talking about leading a discussion group or a breakout session or teaching you something that you can tell after the first 5 minutes, they're all excited and gung-ho, and you're like, I know more than he does.
Or the other thing is when you are with a colleague who you know they know it cold. They are like, and their delivery is so reticent and hesitant that they don't instill that confidence. And so then the receiver of the information is starting to flounder and look around for, is there someone else who can help me?
I've been guilty of that myself. You know, sometimes, you know, there's all kinds of dynamics when you're used to working by yourself. Like I was a trainer, and most of the time, the training function fell squarely on my shoulders, and I have no problem with it. But I worked with this one regional sales manager who just thought he knew everything, but clearly he didn't. And he constantly, when I knew my shit, right? So I'm doing my thing and I'm teaching my class, and I'm like, and you do this like this, and you flip that like that, and you got to do it this way, and don't do it that way. And one of the people that I was training was having physical trouble grasping the technique. And he was like, well, what are you teaching her? And I'm like, I'm teaching her the way I was taught. You do it this way. And he went and taught her he made me get up and taught her the wrong way. And he's like, I don't know why you have such a problem with it. This is how I've always done it. And I wanted to say, then you've been doing it wrong for 2 years longer than I have.
Except that you weren't being hesitant and such. It was the recipient of your training
Mm-hmm.
that was
Well,
the issue.
But it was more about his approach, that he was so confident that his way was the right way, and he was 100% wrong and giving me a hard time and eroding my confidence because he didn't believe me. I was taught by the inventor of the product. How could I be doing it wrong?
His customers will rate him probably like the first 30 seconds. I've always found that customers will rate their reps based on what their interaction, what kind of questions they ask, what their level of knowledge is. And when I worked at one company, the last company I was at, the level at the reps was like C level.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't A level. I came from a company before that we were at A level.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched the doctor because I'm bringing him to my doctors, right? And immediately within 30 seconds, I can see him rate him as a C and write him off. And he didn't even pick up on it. That's why training is so important. And then the management who hold the reps accountable. And it's not existing because there's such turnover in some of these companies. And it's really frustrating.
Has anybody sold in the orthopedic market? Okay, so one of the things I learned in the ER, one of the surgeons I was working with was explaining how to wrap with plaster and with fiberglass. And he says, but one critical factor, and nobody taught me this before, the water cannot be anything hotter than lukewarm or less when it comes to plaster. Otherwise, the heat can't expand, blah, blah, blah. Everybody was so intense on teaching about how to wrap properly so you didn't have any kind of vascular issues and too tight. But he said more important than the wrapping is the heat to catalyst and make the plaster and, of course, the fiberglass. And it's the entire process that was so important. But it's amazing how one person thinks it's important, and another aspect is really important. And same thing, putting in a spinal needle into the back. There is a process to do it right, and they will quickly learn that. And I certainly wouldn't want to be on the other end if the process is wrong.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than a sales manager who thinks they know how to train. Right, Evan?
That was me.
Right. But you know what? So Barry, it's funny. I think I shared this with you. I had a sales manager that never sold our products or never sold in the industry. And we were doing orthopedic trauma. He got hired from outside. And it's nice to have best practices when it comes to management skills from the outside. But he really didn't understand what the sales team was going through on a trauma call. Getting called in the middle of the night, and we could have virtually any type of trauma. At that point, our company separated their spine, so they had a separate spine division. We didn't do maxillofacial, anything above the neck, but every other bone in the body was trauma related, and we had to be prepared. And going in anytime, any place, being prepared to help them out, he had no concept. So he went through the basic training, but even you go through the training that the company puts you through, you can't be prepared for any type of fracture fixation, internal, external, IM rods. It takes you 3 to 5 years to be able to go through those number of cases to get a good understanding of what's happening. And he would come in and say, well, I'm a manager, I know it. And it's like, well, management. You don't really know the products. You don't really understand what it's like. And he didn't really take call. He wasn't there going into surgery.
He could have.
But he didn't.
Going out with my reps and saying when they did their trainings for their customers, I said, I'm taking a product, train me on it first, and then I will train the nurses, the doctors on it, because I wanted to know it like they did. And it built me a respect from the reps, but also from the clinicians.
Right. Well, that's the thing, Evan. We had no respect for this guy. He was the type of guy who led from the rear, and we didn't have the credibility. And, it was just interesting. And he was, no one had any respect. And it's not because he came from a different industry, it's because he didn't put his money where his mouth was and say, I'm going to take call and learn this. So it was very interesting.
Get on another call, believe it or not. Good night.
All right.
Good night.
Guys. Nice seeing you.
All right. You too, Evan. So, yeah, it was very, very interesting. So,
Bad managers are tough.
yeah.
When I did the cochlear implant program, the manager they pulled in from another part of 3M sold pharmaceuticals. And I was new to the company. And we went on my first call I went on with him. And we sat in the waiting room, hoping we'd be seen. And my thought was the cochlear implant was brand new at that time, and our goal was to get the FDA approval. And so I just didn't know anything about 3M policies and procedures. I'd never done business travel before. I hadn't actually done any kind of medical implant sales before, but I thought I know more than this guy. And I went out and I was calling up and cold calling surgeons' offices and being told the standard, he's in surgery or he's not available, I'll take a message. And I'd say, would you please go tell him it's Jessica Sartell with the 3M Cochlear Implant Program? And they'd say yes, and then they come back, I'm going to put you through, or he's coming out of the patient room or whatever, and he's talking to you. And I ended up pretty much not interacting with that manager from that point on. And every couple of weeks I'd call him just to, because I hadn't talked to my manager for 2 weeks and I'm out on the, spending the 3M money all over the place. And, he ended up giving me a really nice promote. He promoted me and gave me a really nice raise. And then called me in a few days later and said, whoops, I promoted you to something you were already at, so you don't get the promotion. I tried to put a big, nice spin on it about, well, at least I get the nice raise. Well, because you're not switching to another level, I really can't give you that much of a raise either. And that's just one of the many things he did. So when Steve was talking about having a manager who leads from the rear, this guy didn't even lead from the rear. He just was awful.
He was the rear.
Well, I'm going to let you say it because.
Yes, but you were thinking it. I don't want to steal your words.
No, it's okay. But
Steve,
yeah, they
Yeah.
did send
Steve.
it back.
Yep. Go ahead, Lisa. Hold on.
I was just wondering, this is off the subject, but I just got an email back from that woman that was looking for representatives for different cities in the United States. She's looking for capital equipment reps that have current work history in the hospitals. I don't think it matters what kind of capital equipment, but they have to be working in the hospitals with capital equipment, but it's paying $100,000 plus a hefty commission.
Wow.
So I don't know if anybody's looking.
I am looking, and I do have capital equipment into the medical market, 7 county area, Minneapolis, St. Paul, but I am not actively working. So if there's an opportunity for me to talk to them, I would love to.
Okay, well, if you want to, Steve, do you want to just send her my information?
Yeah, I will. Yep.
And
If you
Sorry,
just
Lisa.
email me, and I'll
yeah.
email you the info.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Lisa, for sharing that. All right,
You're welcome.
Lisa, the other Lisa, are you still chewing? We haven't heard from you all night. How are you doing?
I'm good. I've just been busy. I wanted to hop on the call, but I've been busy feeding the kids and running around like crazy.
I know, we've seen you. So I just want thank you for squeezing us in. And anything you want to share, anything you want to ask the group while you're here?
No, there's really nothing I want to share. I'm No, I don't think so at this moment. I'm just I don't, I see some jobs out there, but I just don't think they're moving. They're hiring, or they want to hire, and then things come up. So I don't know. I'm at a point where I stopped looking for like 2 weeks because it was just so, it wasn't entertaining to me anymore.
Oh, no, but Lisa, were you here? I'm not sure when you came on, but I was mentioning, and you might have heard some of this, we're getting mixed signals, right? So on one hand, you're like, okay, I got to move forward. On the other hand, well, I got to throttle back. And you're like, what do I do? And on one hand, if the job is being posted, they're looking. The question is, we don't know what their time frame is. And some of these companies, and Jim had mentioned, and Alan had talked about it. Yes, there are certainly some products that are moving in companies during this COVID crisis, and other things are just waiting for the okay from the government. So depending on the company, on one hand, to your point, I wouldn't stop looking, but I think we have to be flexible with our expectations, kind of to what the other Lisa was saying. Even though she had an interview on Tuesday, it's not unusual for things to take a little bit longer. Most of these companies, the staff are working remotely. It takes 2 or 3 times longer for everyone to cross off stuff. It's just we're slightly out of sync. So I think we're feeling the effects of that.
I did hear that whole conversation. I just needed to mentally take off myself.
Good.
To step back. And I also hear and seen companies not hiring people, that they're actually 1099ing them for 3 months until they see what happens. So that's the other shift I've heard.
Yep. Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I think we have to be a little bit flexible with our expectations and keep our options open. And Jim brought up a good point. Is there something you can do temporarily to go there? I don't know. I mean, on one hand, I was on a call this morning with our local Chamber of Commerce. And again, there's a number of businesses who can't open up yet because our state hasn't given permission, but they know in a couple weeks they'll get ready. The problem is the governor has already extended some of these dates, extended before they can open up. And then and again, I'm not picking on anyone, but Governor Cuomo in New York basically put out a statement saying, if people in Manhattan and the Hamptons don't get their act together and, keep their social distance, I'm going to close it down again. So yet on one hand, people are doing everything they're supposed to, and that you have the government coming out saying, I've already told you once, and if you muck up, I'm going to extend that closure. So I think some of these companies and the hospitals are trying to get back on track. So that's why getting a check-in from what's happening around the country is helpful. Something in the Northeast. I mean, I'm 2 hours from New York, 2.5 hours, 2 hours from Boston. So we're in between these epicenters. And yet there are other parts of the country where they're almost open all the way. And that's a good sign. It's just, are we not there yet? And what's going on, Lisa, in Florida? What's going on in your neck of the woods with some of these hospitals and businesses?
Well, we're still in stage 1. So it's still, the beginning is opened. Yeah.
Yeah.
They still haven't released stage 2 yet. So yeah, so there's not much, happening in that area. I actually went out to dinner for the first time the other night. It was very strange.
You didn't eat with your mask on, I hope.
It was very, very strange. When you got up to go to the bathroom, you had to put your mask on. You weren't allowed to walk anywhere except at your table without the mask.
Yeah, I don't know what to think. I don't know if I'm looking forward to it, or maybe they've just trained us to stay home, I don't know.
And I went into a liquor store to buy some spiked seltzer, and nobody in the store, the employees were wearing a mask. But if you were a customer, you had to be wearing a mask to go into the store.
Barry, I was at Home Depot and they all were walking around with their mask like this.
Yeah.
Oh,
Half the people. And I'm like, really, people? Really?
Yeah.
I had a flat tire, and the guy who came to, because I had roadside assistance, so even though I can change a tire, I was like, I'll let him do it. He came, and it turned out my spare was flat, which is really weird because I brought my car in for a couple weeks ago to have all the tires checked. And so but anyway, so he wasn't wearing a mask, brought my car in to get a new tire and get the spare fixed. None of them were wearing masks. Not the person who checked me in, and they knew about the virus because they had the big clear plastic, the counter thing. So all of that, but not a one of them was wearing masks. But the people who were the customers were wearing masks.
Jessica, it's very odd. This is the thing where, and again, I don't want to get political, but you can protest, and you can protest no one wearing a mask. Half the people are wearing a mask. And I saw this great meme saying, I'm going to have a barbecue and I'm going to put a sign, we're going to be protesting, and it's like, I don't know what to think, and it's crazy. And we send these mixed signals and we're all waiting. I mean, we're all in this holding pattern to get on with our lives, and certainly understand, no doubt about it, right? No one's questioning we're doing what we have to. It's just, okay, I'm sitting here like, okay, I'm done. I'm ready to move on.
We've all got fatigue.
What's really
Guys, I got to get going. My battery's about to die on me. I'll talk to you later on in the week.
Yep. See you
Thanks, Alan.
Thursday, Alan. Have a good
Thanks,
night.
Alan. What's really frustrating for me is the people who don't get that we're wearing masks to protect not only ourselves but other people. But to me, it's also about not putting more burden on the already exhausted resources that the medical personnel have and their time and energy in their lives. The other thing is when they have curfews. In Minneapolis, there's a big hoopla about late one night, 10 o'clock, some guys were out on their front porch and they were dressed in black and they were wearing, just whatever, the, clothing that people wear, typical, kind of looking like protesters or maybe even the non-protesters, but the people who are doing all the damage. Well, the police came by and said, you need to go in your house. And these guys pushed back on the porch. No, we're not going in our house. We live here and blah, blah, blah. Well, the police don't know if you really live there or if because it was close to ground zero, if you will. And so people don't understand. So the police threw a flash bomb or whatever, flashbang thing or whatever. And then everybody was all up in arms. I'm like, how are the police supposed to protect us if we're not helping them identify who the bad guys are and who the good guys are? And it reminds me of when I was in college, living in a co-ed dorm, boys, girls on different floors. And some of the girls were having bad experiences because guys were not supposed to come into the women's bathroom, but they would. And they complained, and the solution was that any guy wanting to go on a woman's floor was going to be stopped and questioned. And the people who complained about it, the women who complained about it, said they were offended because their boyfriend had been stopped and questioned on the way to going to her room. Where it's like, get a clue here. You can't have people guarding you who are able to look and go, oh, that's Susie's boyfriend. I can let him go by.
Right.
You know?
And my gym, my gym has reopened because it's a private gym. I know that sounds ritzy, but it's not. And one of the rules is everybody has to wear a mask. You have to bring your own water bottle. They'll let you fill it, but you have to wipe down the dispenser with an alcohol wipe when you're done, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I'm there and the machines are already barely 6 feet apart. They have every other machine set up so that you can be as far away from someone as possible, but the rows are only about 7 feet this way. So there was someone in front of me who was on the elliptical, and she didn't want to wear her mask. So whenever nobody was looking, she would just pull it down and keep doing her exercise and then look around to see if anybody was going to bust her for not wearing her mask, which showed everyone else in the gym that she wasn't wearing it properly. If she had just done her exercise and left her mouth uncovered, nobody would have known. But she kept turning around to see if she was about to get busted. I got so frustrated that I stopped my treadmill, got off and went to the front desk and complained. And they were, and you know, I'm thinking they're probably rolling their eyes at me like, ooh, she's such a rule follower and snitch, blah, blah. You know what? I said, look, here's my deal. I'm like, I freaking hate wearing a mask to exercise. My breath is so bad, even I can't stand it. And I need water, and it's hot, and it's uncomfortable, but I'm doing it for the greater good. Wearing your mask is for everybody else, not even yourself. I'm being respectful and wearing a mask. So if I have to follow the rules, so does everybody else. Why does everyone here feel so entitled that they don't need to protect the rest of the world? It's just rude. Like, people think the rules don't apply to them. And once I said that, I'm like, I hate following the rules too, but I'm doing it because I'd like to be able to come to the gym every day. And next thing you know, the manager overheard me, and without even coming to the front desk, he put his mask on and walked straight out to the gym, and he knew who the offender was. So clearly it's somebody who either has a problem or, you know, one of those entitled attitudes, and they're well known, whatever. And he just walked over and he said, look, I'm really sorry, you need to wear your mask. And she was like, to her husband. I was like, you know what? I'm wearing my mask to protect you. So, you know, screw you if you're not going to wear your mask to protect me. Everybody's just so fatigued from following the rules and being uncomfortable and stretching past their comfort zone. They've just stopped and they don't care. They're just thinking about themselves. And that's why we're seeing all these spikes, because people are just corona fatigue and they're just saying, screw it, which is putting us all at risk. And
well, did people get upset back when traffic laws started being implemented? You know, that you have to stop for certain things, or you can only drive on one side of the road. I mean, where people put out inconvenience, they wanted to do whatever they wanted. It's part of living in a society.
Right.
And you're right, Barry, none of us, I can't think of a person I know who says, I love wearing a mask. I wish I'd been doing this for years. I'm going to wear a mask forever from now on. This is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the only thing I could think of that I told my cousin today, because she and I were talking, I said, well, sometimes I just don't have to do all the plucking that I would. You know, as women.
I keep forgetting that when you wear a mask, you can't put any lip gloss on, because I'm like the lipstick queen. I get so excited for Zoom calls because I can actually wear lipstick that I can see. I went shopping and my mask is just covered with lipstick because I put it on and forgot.
Well, and the other thing that's really frustrating is when I was at the tire place, there was this guy who, one of the customers, and he wasn't wearing a wedding band, and he was in my age group, and he was wearing a mask, and he looked kind of good from the top of the mask up.
Was he toothless?
Oh, no, I have no idea. But he had a full head of beautiful white hair, and he was actually walking over to talk to me when the guy came over that was helping me and said, we need to go out to your car and look at some stuff. So ruined the moment, but I thought there's no way that he could see me smile to encourage him. Yeah, keep on coming. You know? And then also, who knows what was beneath the mask. So it's really a different world out there. And how will people, you know, because I'm not really out looking, but if something does present itself, well, you know, but how do people, you know, people in their early 20s, how are they going to meet people?
The internet. The
Gee,
funny
yeah,
thing
yeah.
is, the funny thing is, have you seen the memes though, where they show a woman wearing a mask and the before and after, and she's smiling, she has beautiful eyes and beautiful eye makeup, and then the after is with the mask off and she's like missing all her teeth.
Jessica, my son met his fiance playing video games online.
Ah,
He didn't know she was a girl for 2 or 3 days, and they started chatting, and then, you know, it was interesting, but they started dating and they got engaged, and, you know, so it's interesting. And you talk about a freak of, you know, in a million years, he goes, I would have never thought that I would have met somebody online. So he wasn't looking, she wasn't looking, they just hit it off. They didn't know. So they didn't even know what they looked like. They didn't even know what gender each other was. So it was pretty interesting.
you know, that's the best way to meet, though, where you have a connection as two people. And then it turns into, you know, something else. That is great. That's wonderful. So they're married?
Not yet.
Yeah.
They've been dating for about 9 months, but they got engaged. And I said to him, you know, you can get engaged. You don't have to get married right now. You know, your mom and I were engaged for 4 years before we got married. And he's like, okay, she's a few years younger than he is, which is okay too. And he's okay with it. But so it's just interesting. It's young love, like to your point, and it's a neat story. So they're not married, they're engaged, and hopefully they'll be engaged for a couple of years at least.
Well, if they want a wedding of any size, they're going to have to wait for quite a while.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a relative who is getting married, and he's ending up having a very small ceremony, immediate family, in early August. And then when it's a time where people can have a big social event, then they're going to have a bigger gathering and reception and all that kind of thing.
We will know that the world is in a different place. We have Zoom dates, Zoom cocktail parties, Zoom conference calls, and Zoom meetings. When we start having Zoom weddings, we're all done.
Hey,
Yeah.
it may happen. You never know.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
That's the thing. You got to be careful what you wish for.
I didn't wish for it.
No, but it may happen. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? So,
Mhm.
all right. Well, listen, we could stay here and chat all night, but
And it would be fun, but you're right, Steve.
you know what? It's interesting. I think there's some topics that really we may have to have a social hour instead of a transition work meeting. Maybe we'll plan for that at the end of the month. We'll have a happy hour.
Oh,
A
social.
send-off party to go back to the real world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know
why
what?
is this ending at the end of this month?
Well, Monday nights will be here. We may be rescheduling the Thursday call. The Thursday call we added because of COVID-19. And it's just the schedule is getting back with the summer, and a lot of people are on vacation and work. So we're trying to figure out how to best do that. So
By the way, I was just going to say, I heard that Maryland is opening up more in about 2 weeks. The gyms are supposed to be open, so.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, Jessica, when we started Thursdays, everybody was at home. If everyone's going back to work or going back to, we're like, are Thursdays, are people even going to be on the call? So we're trying to figure out what's going to be best for everybody.
Mhm.
Yeah, and your 7 o'clock call on Monday night is 4 o'clock my time.
Right. Okay.
I'm looking for a job where I can work out of my house. And then I would think, with their approval, of course, but, say that I would still want to be a part of these starting at 4 on Mondays.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
But
it's good.
hopefully, if you have a job, you won't need our transition phone calls anymore.
No, but I just think it's a good thing to connect with people who are like-minded and you learn things and hopefully you can be of assistance to somebody
Mhm.
and,
That's nice.
that kind of thing. So Evan had sent me an email with his, marketing information. And my editing eye caught a couple of things and shared it with him, and he appreciated that. And again, if I were independently wealthy, I would spend my time helping people realize their dreams. So I'd still want to be a part of this.
Yep. No, and Jessica, thank you for that. That means something to us because we were trying to do a call that would be a lunchtime. Maybe people could come at lunch, and it's really hard between the time zones, right? What's the perfect time for everybody? And we have people come in from all over the country, so there is no perfect time zone. So we're still trying to figure that out. So
Steve, I have the feeling we'll be figuring it out forever. We've been changing
Yeah.
the time of these calls since 2008, trying to find the
know,
sweet spot.
that's true.
And Steve,
Yeah.
when I mentioned that, it was not a complaint, it was a comment.
No, and I appreciate it. I appreciate the feedback, and I wish there was a perfect time. And it's too bad.
Tough. It is tough.
Well,
I used to
the 10
travel.
o'clock on Thursday mornings, it's 7 a.m. for you.
Yeah, but I get up at 6 every morning anyway, so that's fine. But for a while I worked for a software company out here in the Seattle area. My territory was on the East Coast. So I was either flying out there and a 3-hour time, or if I was in the office here, then I was getting up early to correspond with their time. So that difference of sleep time and whatever I'm accustomed to, so no big deal.
Yeah, no, believe me, Jessica, if I was independently wealthy, would be doing all this stuff for free, and time wouldn't be a problem. So we'll figure out something, but I think a good social hour will be nice at some point, and then we can just maybe we have a couple rooms and we break up into different topics. That would be fun.
Yeah, it would be. And those times actually have people seriously think about bringing libations.
You mean I've been drinking all this time for nothing?
Well, I had a White Russian tonight.
All right.
Where I buy liquor, they had a really good sale. The tequila instead of $23 was $14.
Wow.
And I bought Kahlua, which I haven't had in forever. Instead of $27, it was $15.
No.
Yeah.
That's very reasonable.
Never a shortage of things to try, that's for sure.
Yeah. So I don't drink that much, so it'll sit there. But
All right.
I decided tonight. So thank you guys.
You're welcome.
Catherine, I still have your info. I'll probably be reaching out to you about it.
Okay, thanks.
If there's any way I can help, just let me know until I reach out to you. Okay?
I
Thanks,
appreciate
Mary
it.
and Steve.
All right, have a good
Thanks,
night.
Jeff. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thanks, Kath. Lisa, I just got your email earlier. I haven't had a chance to respond, but I'll get to it shortly.
Okay.
Bye, Lisa. I'll talk to you tomorrow morning when if I hear anything, okay?